Hello and welcome back to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, joined today by Zach Symm of orangebloods.com. For the first time, we've talked Texas baseball with the Texas beat writer on the Highway to Hoover podcast, as we're a couple weekends into Texas's time in the SEC. First off, Zach, I appreciate you joining us today and making some time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always good to be on talking baseball with you and the boys. So it's going great. We're getting it ramped up here, ready for SEC baseball.
Yeah, I think I speak for everybody here at D1. Really excited to see what Texas looks like in the SEC, and to see what that looks like. It's something that when you and I were growing up, it was a thing like, what if Texas played in the SEC? What would it look like? And now we're going to get a look at it. So that should be a whole lot of fun for those who don't follow Zach's work. You should be doing so. Does a fantastic job covering the baseball side of things on social at Zach at the Dish on your social media outlets there to follow his work. First things, actually off the field. First question for you, Zach. I saw you tweeting about this the other day, a recent town hall with Chris Del Conte, the athletic director at Texas. What kind of news items came out of that? What was interesting about that from your standpoint?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was they made some changes right before the season around parking, which really got the olds inflamed. So he had to address that first off. And I thought he might get a shoe at him a la Bush in his press conference from an old lady. That was great. But no, they talked about what does a stadium upgrade look like at Texas, right? They already have the framework there. They have the suites, they have the press box and all that. And Del Conte basically said, look, we like what we have. It's more so about refining it. And so they're looking at doing some upgrades underneath the stadium to where, like the old weight room where that is, the meeting rooms, kind of the niceties for the actual team on a day-to-day basis of being in the program. And then Del Conte, touched upon the natural surface versus turf, because Texas has had turf since the beginning of time. And he said, look, I don't mean to throw the shoe over across the fence, but this is a Schloss deal. Like if Schloss wants grass, we're going to bring grass in for him, right? And Texas has a little bit of a unique situated stadium, so it actually makes grass a little tougher due to the overhang. But yeah, I mean, nothing major other than after they finish this brand new sparkling indoor facility for football, it's softball and baseball's up next. So.
Got it. Yeah, that's I associate, by the way, as a quick aside, I associate turf with Dish Falk. Because when I was younger, as I'm sure you remember, if you charged a fly ball at the Dish and it landed in front of you, it was going to bounce over your head. Like that was just a thing you had to, as an outfielder, you had to deal with. And now obviously with better turf as time has gone on, that's really no longer the case. But there was a time in Dish Falk Field where that was a huge home field advantage. If a ball bounced in front of you, you better be sure you can smother it.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a 1/4 inch of turf on top of concrete. And it was, when you slid, I mean, it was terrible. When you dove, it was terrible. When the ball hit the ground, it was bouncing, as you said, way over your head. It was a nightmare to play on that old turf. This is a little bit better, but still, it takes some time to getting used to.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's move to on the field stuff at 6-1 here for Texas. What are your big takeaways so far from the first couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think, coming into the season, pitching was going to be the question. They had a lot of quality arms, but a lot of those quality arms had success in the relief role. So how did that translate to being a starter? Jared Spencer from Indiana State had some starting experience, but very small microcosm of what his entire career had been. Luke Harrison had success as a reliever his freshman year, but had been off for essentially 2 years injured. And so what did that look like? And I think that's where, the Max Wiener effect, for lack of better explanation, is they've come in and they've done really well. They've been solid. They've battled. They've been able to give you 5 innings. And even looking back at last year, you didn't know that you were going to get 5 innings in a game from the starters. It was always going to be, we hope we get 2 or 3. And that this year, you look at him and you go, okay, he's carrying his stuff. His definition is really good, and he's locating, and that's a big change from last year for sure. So pitching has been, I hate saying a pleasant surprise because these are talented kids, but it's been a pleasant surprise from the doom and gloom that you might think coming into the season.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. I mean, yeah, to the point where this actually leads me to my next question, to the point where last weekend against Dartmouth, the pitching really kind of carried the club a little bit. I mean, it wasn't really an offensive outburst weekend for Texas. And so my question there was just going to be, what do you make of that? Did Dartmouth just play well? Was Texas flat? Like, tell me a little bit about what last weekend was like. Because if you're just looking at box scores, it looked kind of off.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. It was about 36 and raining the entire weekend except for Sunday. So that definitely has an effect.
Yeah.
Fish Hulk is north oriented, so you're hitting directly into that north wind. Ethan Mendoza hit a ball 101 on the screws, and it felt like 30 feet short of the warning track. And you're like, oh, okay, it's one of those days. But yeah, the pitching really carried the team. The hitting, I think there's a number of guys pressing right now. They're being a little more hesitant than maybe you've seen in the past. And then the other thing is they're still kind of adjusting to the style of play that Tulo and Coach Lawson want to see from them. They want to get deep in counts. And then it feels like they kind of revert back at times to, oh no, I've got 2 strikes. I need to start, hacking away and instead of staying with the rhythm. And so it just wasn't a very rhythmic offense, for lack of a better word. Like they couldn't get things going. They get on base and then just putter. So I certainly something to watch, but they've got some guys that aren't hitting right now that last year hit 18 home runs and were batting 340. So it's there. It's just them getting going.
On Will Gasparino, I mean, first things first, it seems like he's just had a little bit of bad ball luck. He's batting 241, but he's had, a couple doubles, couple triples, couple of home runs. Like that feels like it'll come around. My question with him is, how optimistic should we be about the fact that his strikeout rate has been low so far this season? Is that something that we think is sustainable, or is it a little bit of maybe a mirage?
No, I think it's actually very sustainable. I think this is what, is par on his development, the tools that he has. I think this is what the next evolution sees. And so it's cutting down on those strikes. His quality at bat metrics are way up compared to last year. And so now it's about hitting the ball and having it not right to a defender, because he had quite a few though this weekend where he'd hit the ball out well to center field, but right to the guy. His approach at the plate is no joke, night and day from what we saw last year. Last year, if you got a strike on him, just throw a curveball away or throw a slider away, and he's going diving. This offseason, he came back from the Cape. He locked in with Tulo and said, what do I need to do? And the coaches just basically said, look, find one approach and live with that approach, whether it's good or bad. Like, you have to find something. There's so many voices in these kids' ears today, where it's coaches, travel ball, high school, parents, whatever. And sometimes it's just too much noise. And so they simplified it, and he's really been able to lock in. It's been impressive. Just, you haven't seen the results quite there yet.
More questions with Zach Symm of orangebloods.com here in a second. But first, a quick ad read for our sponsors at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Get ready for a new season of fishing fun with Academy Sports and Outdoors, and reel in the best gear at low prices every day. Plus, Academy offers easy ways to shop and save time, like free 1-hour in-store or curbside pickup on academy.com orders. I certainly know as the weather is warming up here, I will be getting my fishing gear from Academy Sports and Outdoors here in the North Carolina Triangle area. Glad to have them as a part of Highway to Hoover. I'm sure Zach Symm has spent plenty of money at Academy Sports and Outdoors as a Texan like myself. That's just part of life. Next thing here, Adrian Rodriguez, hot start, freshman. You never know how that's going to go. But obviously he's taken to Division I baseball quite well. Why is that? I heard a lot of positives about him in the fall, but tell us why he's been able to succeed so quickly.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at Adrian and you look at the game, and the other day, I think it was Slossangle, he said there's not one single tool that carries this kid. He's just a really well-rounded player. And so from a hit perspective, the thing that I've noticed about him is he carries the bat through the zone really well, and he stays in that zone. And so unlike a lot of kids that are trying to whip through there really fast, he adjusts, and it's really hard to get an out from him, because no matter what, he's getting the bat on the ball, which is big. I mean, he hit 3 of them this past weekend that were well hit balls, and they all fell short because of the wind and the weather. But yeah, he's got a really good eye. He stays really patient at his approach, and being a switch hitter, he can obviously like give different looks to pitchers, which is nice as well. So yeah, really excited to see what he kind of grows into as he's added mass and he continues to get better pitch recognition overall.
Max Belyeu being the Big 12 Player of the Year last year, it's hard to imagine a step forward after that. Like, how much better could a guy get? But obviously, he's scalding hot to start this season. So I'll just ask it that plainly: Is Max Belyeu better this year?
I think he is better. I think you ask Max, and he probably didn't have the best experience out on the Cape, but he learned a lot about where he needed to personally get better in the box. Specifically, it's the breaking stuff and handling elite breaking stuff. Last year, obviously, he hit 18 home runs. He hit, 328 or so, but it was a lot of boom or bust at times. Whereas this year, he hasn't had as much boom early on. He only has 2 home runs, but he's hitting 109 liners up the middle, right back at the pitcher. And so he's a really uncomfortable place for a pitcher to be because he's just hitting screamers all over the place. And again, it goes back to that approach with Tulo where he's going deep in counts and he's just waiting on you to mess up, and he's going to take every advantage of it because his hit tool allows him to hit basically anything at this point. And so from a more well-rounded hitter, yeah, I think he's a lot better.
Flipping to the mound for a little bit, how cool is it to see Luke Harrison doing what he's done the first couple of weeks, considering what he's battled through? I remember when I first saw him in 2022 as a freshman, I remember thinking I think it was at the Minute Maid tournament that year, maybe. Yep. Yeah. And I just remember thinking well, here's their next guy. Here he is. It might not be 2022 might not be his year, but moving forward. And then of course the injury bug bit him. So just, that's gotta be a cool story for him and for the program to have him back and contributing the way he is.
Yeah. He was a massive piece that no one really expected, I don't think, in 2022. He was kind of an undersized freshman that came out of a private school down in the Houston area and kind of came out of nowhere, and was a huge piece of that bullpen. And then, the injury bug. But this year, going back to last year, we talked to him because he had pitched a little bit, and it was just mentally he wasn't quite feeling there. And then this summer and this fall, asked the same question, how are you feeling? He goes, I'm in. I'm all in. And it was like, oh, okay, this is different, right? That mentality. And it wasn't just, player speak, right? It was from the heart. And the work that he's done with Matt Couch, the strength and conditioning coach, he's up to 215 pounds. He looks solid. And his fastball is better. It's sitting at 93. His curveball still has some hellacious break on it. So it's been a really cool story. I love the kid. He's an amazing kid, the nicest person you'll ever meet. And just a competitor. He just loves to be out there. So it's awesome.
You mentioned up at the top here that a lot of pitching options, but pretty much everything was open going into the season. That echoes what I heard from Jim Schlossnagle in the preseason as well. So far through a couple of weeks in the bullpen, what have we seen in the bullpen that you think, in your opinion, is okay, this is something. They found something here.
Yeah, I think they've got a number of guys. It starts off with Ruger Riojas, the UTSA transfer, true 4-pitch mix, fastball. He's got a slider, he's got a cutter, he's got a changeup. He makes some really uncomfortable looks for hitters in the box, and he's another guy that just fills up the zone. You blink and it's another strike. You blink and it's another strike. He's not afraid to compete, go up and in, go out, whatever the batter is looking at giving him. So he's been really impressive, and he's going to play that Aschenbach role from last year on the A&M squad, where first sign of trouble, it's Ruger. We're up and we can start Dartmouth. Texas was holding on to a 1-run lead. It was a Sunday. You really don't want to play him there. Doesn't matter. Bring in Ruger. He'll get us through. Another guy that was a starter last year that's, really made a difference because he didn't get to pitch in the fall is Max Grubb. And he looks even sharper than he did last year. His sinker has more bite to it. He still has that firm slider that runs away on the arm side. And so I think, having Ruger Riojas with that experience, and then pairing him up with a guy like Dylan Volantis, a true freshman, who, depending on who you talk to in the program, believes he's the next big picture out of Texas. He's got all the stuff, he's got the mentality, and it's more so that they just want to practice load management with him. They don't want another Ryan Prager situation in his freshman year where he was brilliant and then he just started tailing off because he just got worn down and beat up by the SEC. So
Dylan Volantis, also a big human at 6'6". You gotta, if you're gonna wear 99, you gotta have a big frame, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't be a tiny guy out there with 99. So yeah, big human. What are you looking for this weekend with Texas out in Las Vegas? On paper, it's a good field, but I think when you look under the hood, it's like a rebuilding Washington team, a rebuilding Illinois team off of a Big Ten title last year, and then Texas Tech, which is off to a slow start. But at the same time, it's a couple Big Ten schools that have talent, and Texas Tech, who is going to come ready to play because it's Texas versus Texas Tech. So, what kinds of things are you looking for this weekend from the Longhorns?
I think it's a lot of continuation of what they've been working on to this point. I think everyone realizes that they're not there as a complete team yet. They're having a lot of fun. They're winning some games, and they love competing, but they haven't really put a full game together yet outside of maybe Ole Miss. And so, they're going to be challenged on Friday night. The Washington starter, Max, he's actually got a pretty good arsenal. And I've liked what I saw against him in Stanford. And so I think that'll be a good challenge from a variety for the offense. But from an offensive standpoint, it's be consistent. It's continue to go deep in counts, and it's work on being less hesitant, being a lot more free with the bats. And then from the pitching, again, can the starter Spencer, Harrison, and Bean continue to do what they've been doing? And can the back end be solid? So if you burn a Riojas on a Friday night, can the other guy step up on a Saturday night when he's probably not available?
For Texas fans who are listening, who maybe want a little more information on Max Banks, the starter for Washington, I wrote about him a couple of weekends ago because I saw him, and kind of a cool story where he was coming from a D3 in California, and like after the portal had been picked over and he was just kind of like a game of musical chairs, he was left standing, and Washington was like, yeah, all right, come on down. And now he's a Friday guy, and it's good stuff. Like he knows what he's doing. Like it's deceptive stuff. So that will be a tough test for Texas. I'm interested in that as well. It's not a game that the Longhorns can just go into and expect to show up and just run them off the field. So should be a fun weekend. Off air, I asked Zach if he was going. He said no, but he is maybe going to a different Vegas in a few weeks, and that's Stark Vegas. Real quick on that, though, Zach, Starkville stands out, but are there other venues in the SEC that are on Texas's schedule this week or this season that you're kind of interested to see how the team – I'll let you pull it up real quick. I promised you I wouldn't put you on the spot, and yet here I go. But, Starkville's obviously maybe the big one, but without remembering who else Texas has on the road this season, I wasn't sure what else you had there.
Yeah. So, Mississippi State, they're traveling to Stark Vegas, which will be fun to open up just because you're going to have 18,000 fans at Dudy Noble. There's going to be the barbecue out in the left field. This is going to sound completely odd considering I don't think they're a very good team, but Missouri, Texas travels to Columbia. And the reason that's unique is my stepdad actually lives in Columbia, Missouri. So I spent a lot of time there growing up. And so I know the campus really well, and there's a lot of actually really good pizza joints around there. So that'll be fun to go back and kind of see Columbia. The other one that I think you will obviously towards the Arkansas one that'll be a lot of fun. I mean, Baum is one of the legendary stadiums. It's Arkansas, Texas, a lot of history there. So that'll be really unique for sure.
Yeah, those are good ones. Yeah, anytime the old Southwest Conference matchups end up coming up like that, that's always cool. I'm with you, by the way. Like I have family who lives in St. Louis. My dad and stepmom live in St. Louis, so I've also been to Columbia, Missouri a number of times for baseball games. Here's the other thing about that trip: it's in late March. It is no guarantee that it's going to be warm. Yeah, and it's going to be windy, and the stadium is on that hill.
Yeah,
and so it's like 10 degrees colder in there than it is outside. Like there have been, just ask Tennessee, who got swept by Missouri 2 years ago. Like you can go into Columbia, Missouri and think, all right, well, it's Mizzou, it's whatever. And then like you could have a bad time if you're not careful. Like they're tough at home, and that is not a fun place to play if it's cold.
Yeah, so, Carrick he's got he always puts together really tough-nosed teams, and those are ones that they play tough at home even more so. And to your point, like they sit up on that hill, and yeah, I've been at baseball games there where it's like 25-mile-an-hour winds, and you're like, oh my gosh, if someone launches this thing, it'll be in freaking Indiana before you know it.
Right. Yeah. And then the opposite is true, right? Where the wind coming in, it's like you'd need a rocket launcher to get a ball out of here. Yeah. So, yeah. Should be a lot of fun to watch Texas in the SEC this season for a number of reasons. And if you want to keep up with everything going on with the Longhorns this season, make sure you're checking out Zach Symm's work at orangebloods.com and on social at Zach at the Dish. Zach, appreciate you joining me today. Looking forward to seeing you again down the road this season. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you, Joe.
All right. That is going to do it for this edition of the Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. Want to thank our sponsor, Academy Sports and Outdoors. Happy to have those guys on board this season at Highway to Hoover. Want to thank Zach one more time for joining me today, and thank you,